Adrian Newey revealed major news that alters the outlook for the 2026 season, with Planet F1 reporting a significant development delay. According to the race, Aston Martin is struggling badly as they are officially 4 months behind, and the AMR 26 is barely running. This is the moment everyone feared, when the greatest designer in Formula One history switched teams. It is February 6, 2026, and as GP Fans reports, the paddock is reeling from a disastrous preseason test in Barcelona that has left the sport's newest super team exposed. After months of hype surrounding Adrian Newey's arrival at Silverstone, the reality has hit with brutal force. The AMR 26, the first car designed under Newey's leadership as team principal, arrived late and carried a defect list longer than the straight at Catalunya. While Mercedes and Ferrari were racking up hundreds of laps on day one, the Aston Martin garage remained shut in silence, with no engine fire-ups or movement. When the car finally emerged days later, it managed a pathetic 65 laps total before grinding to a halt. Newey then made a surprising admission instead of trying to spin the narrative. He told the media they are starting the new regulation era with a massive handicap because the wind tunnel wasn't ready and the car was rushed. The integration with Honda has also hit a serious snag. For a team that Lawrence Stroll built to dominate the World Championship, this looks like a humiliating collapse rather than a revolution. The headline number is 4 months, which is the exact figure Adrian Newey gave when explaining why his team looked so lost in Spain. In a sport where gains are measured in thousandths of a second, losing a third of a year is practically a fatal blow for the opening rounds. The problem traces back to the CoreWeave wind tunnel at the Silverstone campus. While rivals like Ferrari and McLaren were blasting their 2026 scale models with air as soon as the ban lifted in January 2025, Aston Martin sat waiting. TSN reports that their facility wasn't fully operational or correlated until mid-April. While Lewis Hamilton was already testing virtual setups in Maranello, Newey didn't even have a physical model to test. He confirmed that the design cycle had to be dangerously compressed to even make it to Barcelona at all. They are behind on both performance and their basic understanding of the new airflow physics. Observers tracking the lap charts in Barcelona might have missed Aston Martin entirely because they were barely there. For the first 3 days of the most important test in a decade, the AMR 26 was nowhere to be seen. Mercedes logged over 500 laps, with George Russell and sophomore sensation Kimi Antonelli to gather gigabytes of data on the new active aerodynamics. Aston Martin recorded 0 laps during that same period. When the car finally rolled out on Thursday afternoon, the run became a nervous, halting shakedown that lasted exactly 5 laps. The marshals flagged an electrical fault almost immediately via the car's warning lights before the car died in Sector 3 and triggered a red flag. The marshals had to push the black liveried machine back behind the barriers, providing a visual metaphor that the team's detractors will use for weeks. They missed the first 3 days of the test. If you are finding this breakdown of the 2026 testing chaos valuable, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. We track every development in this new F1 era, so you don't have to. The man currently facing the most pressure is Adrian Newey. The pressure on Adrian Newey is different this time because he is no longer just the chief technical officer sketching lines on a drafting board. As of last November, he is the team principal. He replaced the short-lived tenure of Andy Cowell who had taken over from Mike Crack earlier in the year, to take total control. This was the plan to give the genius absolute power, but that authority comes with absolute accountability. When the car fails to start, it is a management failure rather than just a technical glitch. Critics like Johnny Herbert are already asking if the 67-year-old has bitten off more than he can chew. Running a team of 800 people while simultaneously trying to master the new active aerodynamic regulations is a massive workload. Newey admitted the last 10 months have been extremely busy, which in F1 speak means they are overwhelmed with work. Despite the disasters, the car itself is highly ambitious. When the covers finally came off in the pit lane, photographers reacted immediately to a car that looks like nothing else on the grid. The side pods feature an extreme undercut, and the nose cone is significantly bulkier than the design seen on rivals, like the Mercedes. Newey hasn't played it safe to catch up, but instead has taken a major risk. He described the design philosophy as complete, attempting to manipulate the wake in ways the regulations tried to prevent. It is a classic Newey gamble. If it works, they could find a second of lap time that no one else sees. If it doesn't, they have built a very expensive and complicated tractor. The lack of running means they simply don't know the outcome, yet. The engine presents another challenge. This is the first time in the modern era Aston Martin has run as a proper works team, ditching the customer Mercedes power units for an exclusive deal with Honda. Reuniting Newey with Honda, the partnership that dominated the last era, looked like a smart move on paper. However, the integration is causing headaches, and the stoppage on Thursday was traced back to the power unit's electrical systems. Integrating a new Japanese power unit into a British chassis, with a team that has only ever used customer engines for 2 decades, is proving harder than expected. Mike Crack, now demoted to trackside operations, tried to put a brave face on it by calling it a unique situation. Yet, unique doesn't score points? Mercedes and Ferrari control their own destiny with engines built nearby, while Aston Martin is trying to bridge both a culture gap and a technical gap simultaneously. The mood in the rival garages is one of quiet satisfaction. Mercedes seems to have mastered the 2026 regulations immediately. Their W17 completed almost 8 Grand Prix distances without a single major mechanical failure. George Russell was second quickest, and the car looked stable through the high-speed corners. Even Ferrari, with Lewis Hamilton entering his second year in red, looks solid and reliable. They are refining setups, while Aston Martin is still checking if the wheel nuts are tight. The data deficit is compounding every hour. While Mercedes engineers are already fine-tuning their active aero software for Melbourne, Aston Martin's data banks are empty. They are approaching the first race of the season without crucial data. Lawrence Stroll's influence hangs over the situation. The billionaire owner has poured hundreds of millions into the new campus, the wind tunnel, and Newey's massive salary. He paid for instant dominance, rather than being 4 months behind. The patience of the board will be thin if the AMR 26 is fighting for P15 in Bahrain. Fernando Alonso, now in his mid-40s, does not have time for a development year. He signed an extension, believing this was his final shot at a third title. Watching him sit in the garage with his helmet off, staring at the telemetry screens with a blank expression, revealed his mindset. He knows that in Formula One, you cannot buy time, but you can only lose it. The consequences of this botched start will affect the entire 2026 season. Formula One history tells us that starting with a disadvantage in a new regulation era usually takes years to correct. When Mercedes failed in 2022, it took them 3 seasons to recover. Aston Martin is attempting to develop a car in real time while racing against competitors who are already refining their second iterations. Newey has promised that the car in Melbourne will be very different from the one that struggled in Barcelona. He claims they have upgrades in development that were simply too late for the launch. However, upgrades only work if the baseline is solid. If the correlation between the track and that delayed wind tunnel is off, those upgrades will be useless. We are facing 2 possibilities. Either this is a major flop in modern F1 history marked by overconfidence and mismanagement, or Adrian Newey pulls off a significant recovery that secures his legacy. The worrying part for Aston Martin fans is that the data currently points to a flop. Time is running short before Bahrain, and for the first time in his career, Adrian Newey looks like he is running out of options. Whether this is a temporary stumble or the end of Aston Martin's ambitions, the result will be clear when the lights go out in Melbourne. Thanks for watching. And if you want to follow this developing story with us, subscribe now.